How could feeling lost be a good thing? Well, we all have different emotions and feelings, and oftentimes negative ones that come up. So the problem is not that you feel lost, is that you don't know what to do with that feeling. And this is what I do. I teach people how to take those thoughts, think through them, and make choices in line with what they want. I've created what I call the Mentally Strong Method. I am a psychiatric nurse practitioner who has been through unimaginable pain. So I have lost 3 children and my husband over the course of 20 years. So I know what it feels like to feel different types of pain, different types of negative thoughts. And if we were to think about, I feel lost, what does that mean? Well, here's the thing. It means something different for everyone. And I think we often want a very specific, well, if you feel lost, then you need to find yourself, or you need to have a goal, and maybe you do, but there's not one program or prescription that is for everyone who feels lost. And so this is where we use the Mentally Strong Method. The Mentally Strong Method is this formula, learning how to think through your problems, organize them, and make choices in line with what you want. So if you feel a negative emotion like I feel lost, this is an opportunity. It's an opportunity to get to know yourself and to create a plan for that feeling. So when I say this is an opportunity, I teach people how to do a thought map. When you have a negative emotion come to the surface, like I feel lost, and I call this a negative emotion because it doesn't have a positive fuel behind it, right? And so until you can make that shift. But it's not bad to actually feel these things. So I'm going to give you an example of how I map myself, because I can't map you, but you could map yourself. You could pause right now and get out a piece of paper. Okay? It can be a blank piece of paper. I usually provide ones with cute little bubbles, but it can just be a blank piece of paper. And as you can see in my thought map, I wrote lost right there in the middle. That's what we call our central thought. Now, what do we do with that? And so I asked myself, a thought map is about self-reflection. It's about journaling. You could get multiple hours of therapy down in like 20 minutes. So if you're seeing a therapist, do this thought map and then take it to your therapist. So here we have a feeling of lost. And lost is a feeling that I have encountered. This morning I had to muster it up because it wasn't like what was on the forefront. But when I think about lost, I start thinking about what makes me feel lost, right? And the word that comes up for me and what is really going on in my life right now is feeling alone. I told you I lost 3 of my children. My husband just passed away 9 months ago. I'm alone in the house. I do have grown children, but I am alone in my house physically. And alone in life as far as not having a husband, not having this partner that you're supposed to do everything with. I just start writing these things in the bubble. My kids are grown. Grief of Reggie and Maya. Every time I think about being alone, the pain of my grief comes to the surface. That is just the reality of when I feel alone. When I think about I feel lost, it's like, who am I? I lost as like, am I a mother? You know, I've lost 3 kids. My kids are grown and gone. Yes, I'm a mother. These are things that I have worked through, but maybe you haven't. Maybe something comes up on this map that you're like, ooh, I need to work through that. I'm a business owner, but honestly, is that really important? I do care about people. I know that about myself. And when I think of who am I care about people and I want to help people. I've always wanted to help people, right? An Army medic and then a nurse and then a nurse practitioner, adopting children. Like so many choices in my life have been about helping people. And that's who I am. And so when I feel lost, just writing that down allows me to feel like, oh, I know who I am. I care about people and I help people. And I drew a little line between helping people and being a business owner because That's why I'm a business owner, so that I can help people, right? So, then aha moment, being a business owner does matter because it is part of who I am. You see how just getting these things on paper can allow for some aha moments. Then I ask myself, like, in the past, when have I felt lost? Whenever I have to make a big decision, and, sometimes it's about goals, but I have this fear of failure, and it was intensified by losing my children. So just a quick failure perspective on my story is I'm a nurse practitioner. I adopt 5 children. I have 2 biological children, and my adopted son, Johnny, dies in a drowning accident. I have failed to protect him. That was my goal, is to adopt these children and protect them. And then over the next course of 10 years, my biological son started having catastrophic epilepsy. Johnny's biological sisters started to rebel, and I felt like a failure as a mother. So failure is part of me feeling lost. This is a core belief that I have to constantly work on. A lot of people teach on positive talk, and they just say, manifest this, just think positive. And if you just believe that you are successful, you will be successful. The reality is some of these things go really deep, and even into my childhood, where my biological dad died when I was 10 months old. And so it was me and my mom, very close relationship. And then she remarried, stepdad, more siblings to create this family. But there was a perception that I didn't belong. And I can look back at it being a perception, because definitely from myself and adopting children myself, and I know through all that I've been through in the last 20 years, my adopted father loves me, my brothers and sisters love me, like we are a close-knit family. But in the perception of a child, I perceived that I didn't measure up, that I didn't belong in this unit, right? I felt lost. So being able to ask ourselves these questions allows us to go, and many years later, I have worked through any of my childhood stuff, but just writing it down every once in a while allows me to go, that's still impacting me. It's a perception, just like a perception of a child. I can bring that into the present moment and go, this is just a perception of feeling lost. And then I always bring in the spiritual component. And most recently, after going through all of this hardship of losing my children, my husband, and really wrestling with God, and you can see that through my journey in the grief documentary, I wonder, is there really a God that loves and protects me? And what is the truth around this God? And I want this to be your own journey, but I have, really come to, I know there is something, there is an eternity, but is there an absolute truth? I still feel lost, because there's something, one of the things that I miss most about being in a church congregation was the connection of all believing the same thing. And then you don't feel lost. If everybody around you believes the same thing, then you don't feel lost. So you see how all of these things that I wrote down in my thought map really are a part of the perception of feeling lost right now in the present moment. And so once you do that, and I really strongly encourage you to learn the whole Mentally Strong method. You can do it online, you can do it in an intensive, you can do it in a mini intensive. There's ways to learn the Mentally Strong method, because it is the foundation for what you are going to do to embrace your mental strength. But you also have to take all of this and not ruminate on all of those circles. And rumination is just this psychology word that means you're just fueling the fire. You're just repeating these negative things over and over again. And there's actually research that says going to therapy can sometimes make things worse, because you're talking about these things. But it's important to acknowledge them and talk about them, but then it's also important to organize them and make sure you're doing something with them. So I don't have time to go through, all of the steps, but if I were doing a thought map on myself, if I felt lost, this is my opportunity to stop and do a thought map. And you've seen my thought map, and now I need to organize it and make choices. And so today I'm just writing like some positive statements that come out of this. Who am I? I am a caring, helpful person. That's who I am. That is at the core of who I am, not the successes around me. I like to be productive, but it doesn't define me. I have to remind myself that, because I have a video about how sometimes I get wrapped up in my productivity defining me. I am working through my grief. I have had tremendous grief, and being able to work through my grief and teach others is going to change history. And I know that. I acknowledge the childhood influences, those perceptions that I had even in my childhood that still impact me today. If you look at the very top, the last thing I wrote when I'm struggling with the God thing, and sometimes I'll listen to different teachers within the religious confines or spiritual leaders, and I'm like, well, but who's right? And I'm consuming all of this information, and then I think, well, it's too big to understand. Like, eternity is not really made for our minds to understand. And oftentimes, when someone is teaching within absolute truth, it's them bringing those concepts to concepts that we can understand. Again, I'm not teaching. I'm not a spiritual teacher. These are just the things that go on in my mind. And then I say, oh, it's too much to understand. And I want to say that peacefully. Like, I know there's an eternity. I know that I am protected, and I will see my children again in eternity. But then a negative thought comes in. You're not smart enough to understand. These scholars, these theologians understand, but I have to regroup, fighting those thoughts in a realistic manner. So I acknowledge my childhood perceptions, the things that have happened in my life, my spiritual growth, and how it's impacting this thought of I feel lost. So that's organizing it, putting it in its categories, and then making choices. The biggest thing that came out of this today, and one thing coming out of a thought map, is beautiful, right? It doesn't have to be, oh, I've fixed all of these bad thoughts. I confidently know who I am. I am a caring, helpful person, regardless what I do. Whether I'm a business owner, a nurse, retired, whatever I do, I'm going to care about people, and I'm going to want to help people. So I know who I am. So it gives me a little boost of confidence. I'm not lost. I want you to be able to figure out those things too. If you're like me and type A personality and you've had lots of successes through your life, you might want to define yourself in those successes. So watch my productivity and is not your identity video, and just keep going on this journey of figuring out who you are, thinking through your problems, organizing them, and making choices in line with who you are.